What are some cognitive strategies to manage perfectionism?
There's a whole range of different cognitive strategies, and the most helpful one, I often think, is taking the time to really notice the self-talk that's going on there. So for instance, perfectionists will often have thoughts along the lines of, if I don't do this perfectly, then I'm not going to do well in my career. Or everything that I do needs to be perfect, or it's just not going to be good enough. So it's noticing that pressure, the talk that goes on. There's often a lot of shoulds. I should be doing this better than I can. Everyone else is doing this, why can't I? Or I shouldn't be wasting time procrastinating. So it's becoming alert to the thoughts that are going through the mind, and then noticing those ones that are most problematic or that we might actually be having some agitation with.
Can you stop those thoughts?
It's extremely difficult to stop the thoughts, and the more that we try to stop a thought, the more we are likely to actually think about the thought. So for instance, if I say to you now, don't think of a banana, the first thing that comes into your mind is a banana. So when we're having these thoughts, if we start to say, I need to just stop it, we actually put a lot of energy into trying to stop the thought, and that over time reinforces them. And I think that's a lot of the issue with some people who have perfectionism, is that they focus on trying to stop the thoughts and work really hard to achieve that, and it's actually making those thoughts better. So it's far better to notice the thoughts. So for instance, if you notice that you were having the thought along the lines of, if I don't do this perfectly, then my career is going to end. And then to conduct a cognitive reframing of that. So what that means is that on a piece of paper, you would, and it's initially helpful to do it on a piece of paper. Over time, you can start to do it in your head, but initially it's helpful on a piece of paper. You would, in the first column, write that thought there. So if I don't do this perfectly, then I'm not going to have a great career. And then you would write all of the evidence for that thought, all the reasons why that thought is true. So for instance, in order to do well in law, I have to have high quality work. It's important to not make mistakes because clients are depending on this information there. So you write all of the reasons why that thought is actually true or believable. And then in the next column, you list all of the reasons why that thought may not be true. And so that would be things like, while it's helpful to have high quality work, checking and rechecking does not mean it's going to be any better than if I had that in control. That there are many people in law who do extremely well without putting pressure on themselves. So you list all of the reasons why the thought isn't true. And then in the final column, you come up with an alternate thought or a different way of thinking. So it might be along the lines of, it's okay to trust myself. I'll have a good career in law, if I'm not perfectionistic and if I'm managing things well. And then when you notice the initial thought coming in, you notice that and then you go, well, hang on, an alternative thought could be this, and you allow yourself to buy more into that thought there.
And does that take practice to get to a point where you can have a thought come in your mind and then acknowledge it and then step through that sort of a process? Sounds like a simple process, but I imagine that does take practice.
It does, and it certainly sounds simple, and I'm always very, very aware to let my clients know that it's not a one try it and fix it. We've had these thought patterns for a long time. They've developed because at some point they were helpful, so they're going to want to hang around. So it's important to practice this and to recognise that sometimes, particularly if we're feeling stressed, we might forget to do these things, but it's being alert to the signs and then going back to it. So it's recognising and practicing and embedding that, and then over time it will become more natural. But it's not a quick fix, it's going to take a little while, and that's where getting someone who can help you and support you and kind of check with you how you're going and actually refine the technique that suits you, because not everyone's different, so a technique is not going to suit absolutely every person. That's where working with someone can actually be helpful.